Hello, dear friends. Tonight I'm reading from book The Discovery of the Ark of Covenant by Grant Berkley, Alan Wilson and Baram Blackett. Page 45, The 12 Tribes of Israel. Every nation and tribe of planet Earth appears to have preserved its own version of the theory of creation and origins based upon the remembered traditions of the nation. Comparisons of these ancient memories and the order of the pantheons they exhibit are straightforward enough in most cases, but problems arise when the obstacle of religious fanaticism is encountered. Religion, the great and ancient enemy of knowledge and progress, blocks the way to proper investigation and evaluation, and the situation is compounded when invariably the religionists have gained control over the national record of heritage and of origins and creation. This applies particularly to the ancient Hebrew Judaic pantheons, which, by a tragic accident of history, tragic accident of history, were adopted and generally thrust upon other nations of Europe to supplant and replace the national heritages of those nations. Replace the national heritages of those nations. Very interesting. The Hebrew Judaic ancestral traditions are emphatically not the native traditions of other nations, yet the religionists have for 2 millennia censored and obliterated the ancient truths preserved by all other European nations in order to promote their religious cults. The main tactic is to barbarize and vilify the ancient native heritage, and to pretend that the Judaic ideas are somehow superior, which is of course untrue. I repeat. The main tactic is to barbarize and vilify the ancient native heritage, and to pretend that Judaic ideas are somehow superior, which is of course untrue. Here the multiple figures of powers and deities of the ancient Hebrew pantheon are blindly presented to the Western world as real-life cults, real-life human beings and real-life personalities. The grip of this particular set of religious cults, which were forced upon the Western world, has obscured and frustrated the truth for almost 2 millennia, confusing almost every accurate scenario of the ancient past. Hebrew Judaic history and tradition is emphatically the property of the Judaic people, and it is not the heritage or truth of other nations. Well said, Alan. The British in particular have their own national record and cultural heritage traditions, and have no need whatsoever for the less accurate and inferior borrowed foreign and alien traditions of another nation. Probably the best and easiest illustration of the absurdity of the situation is to analyze parts of this. If we take the Hebrew patriarchal figure of Jacob, we are told in the Bible that Jacob actually had a midnight wrestling match with God, and he lost a hard fight by a narrow margin. Now, if we stop and consider that a man on earth is by comparison far smaller than a speck of sand on a huge beach, and then planet Earth in our galaxy is comparatively smaller than a speck of sand in the Sahara Desert, and then our entire vast galaxy is much smaller than a speck of sand in the Sahara of the great universe, we have to start to think. If the God created this unimaginable vastness in 6 working days before taking a day off, is it in any way imaginable or feasible that a tent-dwelling nomad fought a wrestling match with this mighty deity? This is not credible. It may have been credible in the Dark Ages and in the medieval times, but now it is definitely not credible. Jacob reportedly came away with a damaged thigh and always limped after the conflict. Was there a tribal chieftain named Jacob? Yes, there was. Did he have a single-handed fight with God? No, he didn't. Jacob appears to be a multiple identity character with solar-stellar attributes and a human dimension as well. He was mythical and he was real, and the diktat of as above so below applies. The absurdity of this situation is perhaps demonstrated with the story of the mythical Jacob. He had 12 sons, and these 12 sons provide the alleged 12 founders of the tribes of the Hebrews. These 12 sons are presented as human persons and as the founders of these 12 tribes in human form. Maybe there were 12 sons who were used to mirror image the state and shape of the heavens in the almost universal idea of as above so below, and maybe not. What the 12 sons really are the 12 signs of the constellations of the Hebrew zodiac. If the division of the Hebrew people into 12 tribes by Moses was by birth date signs, then perhaps some sense begins to emerge, for it was Moses who formed the tribal arrangements for what was later to become the quite distinct Israeli and Jewish nations. He appears to have done this in the simplest possible manner under circumstances of great stress, and he arranged the people by their birth dates. All this emerges very clearly and is illustrated in the mythology of the storybook known as Genesis. The problem which arises once the 12 founders of the 12 tribes are identified as star signs is clearly the question of what or who were their parents and ancestors. Who or what was Jacob, their father, and who or what were their parents and his ancestors? In the Hebrew history books, they are represented as human beings. Yet any examination of their doings and natures shows that maybe they were not. We appear to be presented with a hodgepodge mixture of half-remembered myths and legends, all of which were converted into a national ancestral story. In normal circumstances, it matters little what anyone deduces from the histories of a nation, and certainly the London establishment has spent centuries wrongly slandering correct British histories, which were preserved in Cymric Wales. Unfortunately, when what is called orthodox dogmatic religion comes into the picture, then all sense, logic, reason, and the need for proof and evidence all goes out for the window. There is always an irrational, emotional reaction from Orthodox Christian churches when the matter of these ancient pantheons based upon stars, constellations and planets and the power of natural phenomena is raised. The emotional religious desire is to see these objects as long dead human beings and to resist national analysis. Basically, it was and still is wrong to have obliterated British heritage, culture, tradition, history, and to have replaced it with a foreign and alien set of traditions and historical models. If Christianity demands the obliteration of all other national heritages and traditions as it has for centuries, then the price is too high. As stated, there is a direct reference to the solar nature of the founders of the 12 tribes of the Hebrews in chapter 49, verses 1 to 28 of the book of Genesis. Here there is a long poem that clearly describes the true nature of the 12 sons of Jacob. Each is clearly portrayed as a stellar zodiac figure, and is immediately demonstrates that Moses, a genuine, traceable historical figure, was dividing his new nation into tribes by the association of individuals with star signs. This is what emerges. Name: Reuben, nature, the flute, zodiac sign, Aquarius, the water carrier. Name: Simeon, Levi, nature, the twins, zodiac sign, Gemini. Name: Judah, nature, a lion, zodiac sign, Leo. Name: Zebulon, nature, a sea creature, zodiac sign, Cetus. Name: Issachar, nature, donkey horse, zodiac sign, Aquileus, Pegasus. Name: Dan, nature, a serpent, zodiac sign, serpents. God, name, God, nature, vengeance, zodiac sign, Hercules. Then we have Asher, which is a farmer, zodiac sign, Arcturus. Name: Joseph, half man, half horse, zodiac sign, Sagittarius. Name: Benjamin, a wolf, zodiac sign, Lupus, Mars. Then we have finally Naphtali, a deer, zodiac sign, Monoceros. There is no mention of any of the star signs associated with the gods of Egypt and of the Chaldeans, which Moses firmly prescribed. The ram, represented by Aries, would give association with Amun-Ra, and Cygnus, the goose or swan that forms the other part of Amun-Ra's insignia, is also ignored. Taurus, the bull, and perhaps representative of the 4 bull gods of Egypt and the Baal gods of Chaldea, Assyria, and Israel, is also omitted and only comes into play with Manasseh and Ephraim, that half Egyptian sons of Joseph. Venus as the representation of Ishtar and Isis is also absent. In fact, the priestly twins Simeon and Levi are represented as the twins of Gemini. The Castor and Pollux of the Greeks are described as they who cripple bulls, and Gemini is the zodiac sign immediately next to Taurus, the bull in the heavens. The description of Joseph as a wild donkey with bow and arrows matches the notion of the half-man, half-horse archer armed with his bow and arrows. If these 12 tribal ancestors of the Hebrews are simply star signs, then what of their own ancestors? It seems that we are faced with an ancestral pantheon, and this is no different to the ancient conceptions of the Mesopotamians and Egyptians and others in the east, and then also of the Khmer, the Irish, and the Teutonic nations who moved to the west. To give a flavor of what this is all about, the Christian writers cite the name of Gemini the twins as Taumin in Hebrew meaning united, and the old Coptic name of Gemini as Pima also means the united. The Arabic star of Gemini as Al-Tauman is also said to bear the same meaning of united. The beginning is a good place to start, and we find that Adam is represented as first man and Eve was his wife. They have 3 sons, who are Abel, the bear, Cain, the camel-leopard, and Seth, the farmer and ancestor of humankind. It takes no great stretch of the imagination to see Adam as Cephus, the king of heaven, and Eve as Cassiopeia, the queen. Cephus as a constellation contains the star Alpha the First, that was once in ages long past the pole star, the known movement of the earth which possesses the point the North Pole towards a new pole star has been handed down to us as the casting out of Adam and Eve from the heavenly Garden of Eden. Here we should bear in mind the principle of as above so below, and there is evidence of a casting out on the earthly plane as well. The great serpent that was responsible for the downfall of Adam and Eve is still visible in the heavens as Draco, wound around Polaris, our present pole star, the ancient great tree of the heavens. From this, it is easy to identify Abel the bear, with Ursa Major, the great bear, and to match Cain, the outcast, with the camelopard. As the new pole star is further north, so a new circle of constellations in a new zodiac came into play. The camelopard moved out from the central area of the heavens, matching Cain being driven out. In the same way, Arcturus, the farmer sign, is easily identifiable as Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve. Cephus and Cassiopeia and the imagined father of the human race. The casting out of Adam and Eve was in the heavenly sense simply the inexorable shift of the polar position away from the star Alpha in Cephus to our new and present Polaris. The center of the heavens has, as seen from planet Earth, had changed. If it can now be accepted that we are dealing with the same type of evolutionary pantheon as is found in many other national remembrances, then we can look further at the other characters in the pantheon story. The most likely candidate for examination is old Abraham and his line of descendants. Time and again, this family fails to produce natural offspring, and they constantly need divine, heavenly intervention to produce a quite inevitable son and heir, but never a daughter. Even more strange, the females are constantly well past the age of childbearing when they produce the sons of God, and there is obviously a non-human situation involved in this. Equally, the family intermarriage is remarkable. If Abraham or Jacob limped, just like Vulcan of the Romans, just like Ea of Chaldean Mesopotamia, and just as Hephaestus of the Greeks, then he matches with Gwydion of the Cymry Welsh. Therefore, Abraham should be part of a trilogy, and he is, as he has two brothers in Haran and Nahor. The fact that Philo of Byblos, quoted from the works of the Phoenician historian Sanchuniathon, who wrote around 500 BC and stated that in Judea the patriarch Isaac was known as the planet Saturn, needs to be taken into account. Interest in Sanchuniathon's notations was aroused by scholars following a theory that the sacred stone of the biblical Jacob and the story of his having a dream while sleeping on his sacred stone called Bet-El. Different commentators have differing ideas about the stone, and some connect it to early Hellenic pillar stone and tree worship. Basically, Jacob used the stone as a pillow, and various writers allude to the practice of pouring oil on the sacred stones, used in pillar worship, and so on. The Beth-El stone has been seen as a parallel with the Baitilos, which was a stone swallowed by the Greek deity Kronos, believing it was his son Zeus. In other words, the Baitilos stone was the sacred stone of the Cretan Zeus. The strange part of the matter is that according to Sanchuniathon, writing around 500 BC, Kronos, from the Phoenician call Israel, which means that the deity Kronos, Saturn, is none other than Israel, who is Jacob, and this makes his son, Zeus, Jupiter, to be none other than Judah. The theory was that the Irish and Scots were somehow the 10 tribes of Israel, and that they took Jacob's stone to Ireland with them. Then the Irish kings were crowned on a stone called Liafael at Tara, and it was theorized that this was the biblical Jacob's stone. It was then theorized that the Scone stone upon which Scottish kings were crowned following their migration into northern Britain after the catastrophe of the comet Debris in AD 562, was the stone from Tara, which was in turn Jacob's stone. If the Cymric Welsh had come up with less than 1% of this theorizing, they would have been ridiculed. Next, it was held that Kronos had auxiliaries who were called Elohim, meaning, if God be with me, and then that the Bet-El stones came from heaven and were as such endowed with life. Kronos was then said to have had a son named Yehud, and Yehud is obviously almost Yehuda or Judah, and the Greek Jupiter is simply a variant of Judah, Jehuda. The story of Kronos' murder of his own children is seen as a variant of parallel of Abraham's attempt to kill again, the story of Kronos' murder of his own children is seen as a variant of parallel of Abraham's attempt to kill his son Isaac as a religious sacrifice. In addition, the offer made by Judah of himself as a hostage or surety of the safety of Benjamin is quoted. The only point of interest in all this is the ancient notion recorded by San Juan Yaton that Israel was known as Kronos, Saturn, and therefore there is a distinct solar and possibly a stellar aspect to ancient Hebrew remembrances. Whew, okay. Yeah, until the next time. Bye. Cheers.